Hope I don't fall asleep here. My name is Vitalis Tita. I'm an entrepreneur, and one of my businesses is farming, and that's one of the most important one to me. My business is called Better Greens LLC, and we specialize in culturally relevant vegetables. So, in other words, African vegetables is what we specialize in. We've been in business since 2016, and serving communities here in Minnesota and around the country. Nice to be here.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Mulabisha from Zambia, of course, and my company is Platts Enterprise Limited, and we also specialize in agriculture, mostly centered around corn production and soya beans production, and as well as animal husbandry. Otherwise, we don't have affiliations in Minnesota, and this is a good platform for us to get affiliated, and basically that's it.
Try that one. There we go. Gary Wordish, I'm president of Minnesota Farmers Union. We're a general farm organization representing family farmers in rural communities, and been in existence nationally since 1902 and in Minnesota since the early 1900s. I still live on a family farm, and we rent our farm to our son, and actively help him on the farm when I'm able to. But I enjoy that. I enjoy. Roots are still on the farm. I enjoy when I'm able to get in a tractor and help my son.
All right. So the first question I'm going to ask is to Mr. Vitalis, who is an emerging farmer. And I think in the context of why we're here today, I think a lot of presentations have touched on the impact or rather what some of the challenges that small-scale farmers perhaps face. In Zambia, I think the ambassador referenced that perhaps it's more resources that the government needs to maybe look at, and maybe the agency needs to look at. Would you just talk a little bit about your experience as a farmer in context to having resources or access to resources, and perhaps also what it means for you to have a dedicated office now at the Department of Agriculture responsive to your needs?
Thank you very much, Lillian, for that question. I forgot to mention also that I wear the hat of the president of the Minnesota African Immigrant Farmers Association, and I'm going to speak to that. And you hear me reference that in some of my responses up here. But you see, what got me into farming was not because I wanted to go out and start a business in farming. I just wanted to eat the vegetables that I was growing up in Africa, and Mama used to cook that, and we eat that. So when I moved here, I was craving those. Right, I just wanted something for myself and for my family. And long story short, I realized that many of people like me that migrated from Africa now call United States home are also in the same boat like I was. And so my discovery led to a lot of demand, a lot of requests, which gave me the idea to be able to just start a business, right, and growing ethnic African vegetables. The idea was exciting, when we started in our backyard, and I had a friend that was a farmer. He was happy to give me like a quarter or maybe less of an acre. It was exciting. But then when the idea or the need to grow begin to itch, now that's where the challenges started, because he cannot give us more than what he was giving us. It's like, man, you're asking too much now. And so that was one challenge, because then we needed to expand, right, to meet that market that we've created. So access to land was a problem, and still continues to be a problem. Compared to Zambia, based on the conversations that we've had here today, land is not the issue. Access to land, actually, you're giving out land. Come on, through the Farm Block program that you guys have talked about here. So that is a difference. So with us here, it's a challenge to access land to be able to grow the vegetables that we're growing. But also there's also comes the challenge of technical support, because I'm not trained to be a farmer. I didn't go to school to learn how to do agriculture. I grew up in a farm in Africa, right? So that is coming in handy. What my dad taught me, what my mom taught me. At the time, I thought it was slavery and torture, but now it's paying off really big time, because I can employ some of that knowledge and experience, and that has really helped me to be able to farm, right? But again, you hit these challenges where you're in a different economy and society, and you want to be able to employ some of the technology and adhere to some of the policies and regulations that come with farming, and then you begin to have some challenges. So that is another challenge there. And then now the market in itself, even though it might seem like it's a low hanging fruit, it comes with challenges, because you have to be able to transport your goods, you have to be able to process your goods in the standards that requires or that's with the policy that's in place stipulated by the government for you to be able to process that food or those goods and then put them in the market. There's a challenge for that, because you need a facility, you need a certain type of processing environment. It needs to be tested. You have to have your water, meet the standard, and all of these different things. That is a huge challenge for a small farmer, right? And so those are some of the challenges. And again, when you want to access capital to expand, you need maybe now small equipment, tractors, some implements. Again, you cannot have access to those, because some of the traditional loans that are available to small businesses here, unfortunately, some of us are not cut out for that, right? And then we have to rely on some of the grants and different things that come down from the government through the state and the MDA servicing us to that. And we've really found the Emerging Farmers Office to be a wonderful tool, and I've been bragging about it everywhere I go, because I don't know if people fully recognize the potential of that office, but it holds the answers and to the keys to some of the challenges that we as small farmers face here in the state of Minnesota. And I think that probably applies everywhere in the United States. So we can aggregate our efforts, and through this office, it becomes very easy for information to come down. It becomes very easy for resources to be tailored down that will meet the needs of the individual farmers. Rather than working in silos as individuals, we've come together in groups of farmers, and then we can be able to aggregate our challenges. We tailor them to that office that is dedicated to people like us. Then it makes it so easy for the department to respond to our challenges. And so far, it's been very effective. I know we're still in the very early stages, but there's still a lot that needs to be done, and it's looking very hopeful. Yeah, right now it's looking very hopeful, because the office is growing itself, and the farming community are responding to the importance of that office within the community.
Thank you, Vitalis. Joe, I was going to ask you to close to what Mr. Vitalis Tita has talked about. You're a diaspora farmer that owns a farm back in Zambia.
Right.
What are some of the resources you feel you have harnessed back home? Vitalis is talking about resources here for someone like him, farming here. How about for yourself in terms of acquiring your farm and the type of production that you're interested in? I know that we've had presentations that there's now a diaspora office at the Ministry of Agriculture. What is that experience for you? How are you leveraging those resources?
We actually, it's amazing how similar most of the challenges that we face back home as compared to what you guys are facing here. Most of the times, what I found out is we started our company back in 2009, 2010. And the goal actually for me was to, just get into production, construction and block making. But then looking at the needs that we were, facing in Zambia, especially when it came to relatives and friends and the country as a whole, agriculture was one of the areas that we decided we should, get into, because most people were, running into situations where they needed corn and stuff like that. So then we decided to diversify and get into agriculture. And at the time, there was so many challenges that we faced in terms of harnessing the resources. I know that right now there's an office that's been opened, and I commend the government for that. But when we started it, we started at a small scale, with cows and goats, and we started, farming corn and soybeans. So there wasn't much resources at the time that were available for us to boost our, our production. So we relied mostly on our own funding as a company. So that's what we've done for the most part of the seasons that we've gone through the years. But as of 3 or 4 years ago, that's when we engaged the local government in Kushi. By the way, my farm is in the farming block, one of the blocks that they were talking about. So we engaged the local government there, and fortunately, we were able to be given a loan that we utilized for purchasing products that we used for for farming then. So since then, we've been surviving on the regeneration of whatever products that we had, like the corn that we plant, whatever we can sell in the markets that are available, then we produce in that regard. So as far as the resources, we haven't really engaged the government as much. We haven't really used the offices as much, but it's something that we look into getting into, in the near future.
Thank you. And now to you, Gary. I think you can put it all together. I'm sure you've been listening to presentations that have been going on before this panel. You've listened to what the two farmers have to say. As the president of Minnesota Farmers Union, and by the way, you were sitting next to presidents. The ambassador is a representative of the Zambian president. We had Commissioner Peterson, who is working for the governor. And I'm bringing this home because I think the Zambian delegation or the ambassador said that the Farmers Union president sits next to the country president. So Gary, you were sitting next to presidents. That is what I was trying to bring home. So bringing all this together, which Farmers Union is very important and very critical. It's been in existence for a long time. What are those opportunities that you see based on your experience, based on the work that Farmers Union does between the government of Zambia, or rather just the potential that Minnesota has that we can either export those ideas, technologies, infrastructure, whatever it is, and what are some of the things that perhaps you have learned or gleaned in from those presentations today?
Well, first of all, I did tell the ambassador during the lunch break, I was really glad to hear him make the comment about not to forget the small farmers, within Zambia. And I'll just give a little history of Farmers Union. We got started in, like I said earlier, in 1902 in Texas. Basically, at that time, the farmers weren't getting a fair price. In Texas, it was selling their cotton to a gin. They weren't getting a fair price. So the organization was formed, and later in the upper Midwest here in Minnesota, our roots go back in the early 19-teens. And it's kind of the same way, not getting a fair price for what you sell or getting a fair price purchasing your product. So we formed a cooperative movements and really put the farmers in a better position to both buy and sell. And I think that's important, listening to them. And I think back to my years when I started farming, it was just, number of years ago, but how the landscape has changed. Farming has always been a struggle and always will be a struggle, but it's important to keep families on the farm, and that's why, we have that same struggle here. If you're already involved, if you're born into agriculture or marry into it, or, in a traditional type crop farm or a livestock farm, it's a challenge to keep that going. It's a challenge to pass it on, but at the same time, it's more of a challenge for somebody else to get into it because the huge amount of not only land access, but the huge amount of capital that's required. And that's why, we have had growth in the small farms within Minnesota too, you know, whether it's a small vegetable farm or a small livestock farm. So there is some hope in the, you know, there is some opportunities in agriculture, and that's where, you know, we have to work together, you know, whether it's, you know, in Minnesota, we work a lot, farmers, we work a lot at the legislature, and Lillian's department job is just a good example of what some of the things that we've helped accomplish at our state legislature. We helped a few years ago get that department help pass legislation and funding to the Department of Ag to get that project started. So that's an example in that we spend a lot of our time on legislation helping that benefits farmers in rural communities, both at a national level. You know, the Farm Bill is the one big thing, and at a state level, it's, you know, you hear, you know, farmers were good about, I don't know, bragging or complaining, either whatever you want to say, but, you know, everybody has struggles, and we have to work together, and, you know, we can complain about too many regulations or whatever it is, but we have to have a voice at the table, and that's what we try and do, is provide a voice at the table to affect change that benefits family farmers and rural communities. Really depend on agriculture. You know, in Minnesota, in the United States, I think you said in Zambia, agriculture is the second in the United States. It's approximately about 30% of, you know, not just, even though some of the farmers actually farming, you got the processing industry. There's a whole lot of industry that's involved with agriculture, and, you know, the one thing people need to eat, and that's what farmers are good at, is raising that food. They just need a chance to.
Thank you. And that actually, I'm going to ask you another question, Gary, because it falls into one of the things I was going to ask, which is legislation. And that is something that I think you guys do very well, always at the Capitol, testifying, but also just working towards policy development. I think I saw you testify at one of the Senate hearings, and I know one of the things you were testifying in support of was the issue on nitrates, right? And I think there was a conversation about the impact of nitrates and runoff, but also investments in grants, right? For more grants. And then the one I was really interested in, which I think will also be relevant to our conversation today, is the K-12 schools to teach meat cutting. And I think why that may be relevant is because, you know, our guests today are looking for opportunities and ways to improve or to enhance things that we are doing. Could you talk more about some of those things that you were, Farmers Union was championing, and why?
Well, you know, I'll go with the first one you started out with, is the nitrates in. You know, we have an issue with nitrates in our groundwater throughout the whole state. There's no doubt, but it's worse in the southeast part of the state, and a lot of that is because of the karst soil conditions. So, you know, and as farmers, we've changed. I can just think back when I started farming as a young kid, which I said was a few years ago, but the nitrogen itself, it was relatively cheap. We just put it on to get a crop, you know, and it's dramatically different now because of the cost of the nitrogen, you know, the fertilizer is high price and your margins are low. And now we do more extensive soil testing. And so the farmers now don't apply any more than they need. And that's the importance of research too, you know, whether it's university or, you know, it's a lot of research helps us as we plan for the future. So we are doing, you know, farmers are doing good practices, but it takes, once you get it in the ground, it takes time to correct that. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. So that, you know, that's you know, water is probably the most important thing we have on the planet besides food, because everybody needs water for life. So that's an issue we'll continue working on. You know, and the farmer's voice has to be heard on that too. And you mentioned the grants like meat processing. You know, Farmers Union, we got involved a couple of years ago now, and we're working at 2 colleges, helping them start up their meat processing or meat cutting program, train people. And that's important. It provides more markets for the farmers, but also it's economic development for these rural communities. If you can get the meat shops going again in rural communities, it not only provides an economic base for that community, but also it's another chance for an opportunity for a small family or a large family to have another business. And you know, it's important to retrain. Well, we did a research a about a year ago now, we went out and interviewed about 50 of our meat lockers in Minnesota, and they're just like the farmers, or a lot of them are just like the farmers. A lot of them are aging out. They would like to pass that business on or get out of that, retire and move on. And they don't always have a family member that wants to take it over. So it's important to train more people in that industry to help take, succession for those people. And it's important. It's a big lift, but we've over the years, we've got, we have the very large meat packing houses, which we need to feed their 10 billion people in the world. We don't disagree with that, but we also need to have rebuild our regional local marketing system too. We need a combination of both, just like agriculture too. We need all types of agriculture, and that's what we do as Farmers Union. We try and represent all types of agriculture because we're stronger if we have all types of agriculture, more people farming, and it helps our communities and it helps the state. And they're going to mention to the ambassador, it'll help Zambia out. The more people you have out doing that, we're just better off.
Thank you, Gary. So Vitalis, I know you're very passionate. Of course, you are leading an organization that is bringing a lot of African immigrants together to get into farming. In line with our topic today about bilateral trade, but also opportunities for farmers, we can look at it in, in two separate or both. What are those opportunities that you have realized that help advance your operation? It could be technology, it could be research. What are some of those opportunities that you've realized that perhaps our Zambian small-scale farmers can maybe hear from you, that they may start thinking about? I know back home sometimes people are a little shy about getting together with technology, right? But could you talk a little bit about how that has helped your operations?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Lillian. All of the above, the things that you mentioned, have really come and helped me. But some that I could just single out and talk about would be the access to technology, like farm technology, has been key because initially when I started farming, all I saw around were the big commercial farmers with big combines, big tractors, and they were farming hundreds of acres of land, right? I was like, I have 2 acres here. I don't need a combine for 2-acre land, right? And that translates into, I think, most of the stories with smallholder farmers back in Zambia is these are people with like 1 acre, 2-acre land, right? But then I came to discover that, there's actually equipment and technology that could come in and enhance farming for small holder farmers, will reduce their labor cost and will also increase their productivity. So when I discovered some of those, I started investing in them. I invested in a compact tractor that was able to, do what I was able to do at the time with 3 acres of land. I found out there are a lot of implements that can go along with that tractor. I don't need to buy another tractor. I just buy small implements that help me with planting, with mulching, even with some of the rototilling that we need to do before we plant. And so some of those really help because now I could literally just, plant the whole season with just myself and my son. I don't need 3, 4, 5 people like I used to do, and we all will be breaking our backs trying to plant the corn, trying to plant the peppers and all that stuff. But now on a tractor with a transplanter, 15 minutes, you're done. So that was a game changer. And also the technical advice that we get, partnering with the Emerging Farmers Office through other community organizations like the Good Acre. We have like University of Minnesota Extension. They've been very helpful coming out, giving us some of the holistic approach and knowledge about farming. And then other support from other communities that open up to teach me about business development and how you can gain access to markets. So those things really are game changer for me, and it's what really kind of meets my passion and makes it meaningful, and now gives me a renewed hope of you know what, I can go as far as I want with this thing, because there are actually resources that could make that happen. So thanks.
Thank you, Vitalis. And I was going to go into market access. So I think I'll ask Joe to talk maybe a little bit about that. You having your operation back in Zambia, being here, and maybe having the benefit of taking in maybe learnings from here, but maybe other resources. What is the market opportunity like for you in Zambia? And do you have an opinion or thoughts about how that could open up opportunities bilaterally or for farmers like you to, I don't know whether it's aggregation or whatever it is that can help propel your business or maybe even scale?
We actually, this kind of depicts the various stages and levels of farming. It seems to me that you've been doing this quite a bit, So as far as the market itself is concerned, what we have experienced back in my company while we've been doing this is there's of course there's some market back home in the locally, where we can sell our products in our maize and our corn and soybeans and stuff. But there's so much that you can get from those products that, other markets or other places can do that for you. So we've realized as we've been planting soybeans, for instance, that we can get, cooking oil, from the soybeans itself. So for that, we've been targeting markets in a neighboring country, Congo. Congo is the one that's been buying most of our products, We do sell our goats as well to, within the local markets there, within the country. But most of it has also been going to Congo. Kasumbalesa is the place, that's what we call it. So our aim and our goal has been to diversify in so much that we can also export our products. So it's good to know that there are avenues and markets outside, even in the United States. Somebody talks about setting up legislation that's going to ease our ability to export things to to this country here. So our aim and our goal is to expand within the country and expand within the region of Africa, because there are some neighboring countries, I heard that being said as well, where the demand for corn and soybeans and other products are high. So if we can get to that, the neighboring countries of Botswana, Congo, and then, have openings or markets that are available here in the United States as well, to sell our products. So that will be a great advancement for us.
Thank you. And I know in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap up with just final comments from the panelists. And so I'm going to start with you, Gary. So we are aware that there is a Zambian Farmers Union. And your counterpart was going to be here. They're not here. But if you could just sort of extend or share what you see as something that you could collaborate or the partnership. And I know when we were talking offline, you mentioned about the wider global, I think, organization. If you could just talk a little bit about that and just kind of make that extension, and what are some of the ways that you can maybe collaborate with your counterpart in Zambia?
It's on. There we go. I mentioned to Lillian earlier, I was looking forward to meeting the Zambian Farmers Union president. I'm not sure if I met him in the past yet or not, but anyway, Farmers Union, we belong to what's called the World Farmers Organization, which is a global organization made up of family farm organizations. And the Zambia Farmers Union is also a member of that organization. We had our General Assembly last year in South Africa. So I was in South Africa last year, and this coming year it's in Rome. So I'll be in Rome, and hopefully he's there so I can meet him. But it's listening to you earlier, because by participating in the World Farmers Organization, I've made friendships and meet farmers from a lot of these other African and European countries and down under. It's interesting because farmers are the same all over. You just want to make a living, you want to support a family and support your local rural communities, and we have a lot of the same struggles. There's no doubt. We're talking about land access, and in Zambia now, I was glad to see that's open. You're opening up. You have it targeted different levels, and so a small farmer can maybe get access. But even with that, there'll be other issues that we're all aware of that. But that's where it takes the role of whether it's us working together here, or like the ambassador, or governments, or farm organizations. You kind of have to work together for the best interests of not only our members or our communities, and we have stronger government. And I know I've always, it's easy to sit and complain about your government or complain about something, but if you don't get involved, you don't really have a right to complain. And that's kind of the way I feel. And I've proud to represent, as Minnesota Farmers Union. We do a good job of representing all types of farmers. We got Jane in the back there, a small beginning farmer from Kenya background, and I have my son going on we turned our farm over to my son, so I enjoy helping him. But it's just farming is the background of not only the United States, but a lot of all these other countries too, because I said earlier, people have to eat.
We just had a very good lunch. And I'm glad you talked about I always say representation is important, but beyond that is participation. Okay, right? It's one thing to say I want to be on the table, and then what are you doing at the table? So we have to participate, and I think someone like Vitalis is a good example of that participation, including Jane. These are folks who have really participated from that emerging farmer community or new farmers in our state. So Vitalis, your final word. I would just ask, my question would be, as your final sharing with the audience, is in terms of generational wealth, building generational wealth for your family, for your community, what is that final word or ending word that you can share with our Zambian friends online, but also those in the audience, why it is important, why farming is a viable economic opportunity and a generational wealth pathway?
Thank you for that question again, Lillian. Farming for me is the idea that it's a business is secondary. It's just because that's the vehicle you can keep it going. Farming for me is a passion. When we were growing up in Africa, for me, food was about surviving. We eat to survive, so you can live to see another day. But when I came here, I realized that the food and the types of food that we grew up eating it carried more than just a survival at that time. It carried along with it a history, a culture, a tradition. And so at this point, it's not just food on the table. It's me going back in time and appreciating and valuing my culture. It's me being able to communicate those values to my children and passing on that history. So there's that aspect of it that is very critical, and that's what brings even more meaning to it for me at this time. And for legacy, why food is, I think that at the end of the day, we've grown to be more concerned about what we eat these days, especially here in the United States. People are very leery and weary about what they're eating. There's always this sense of suspicion about what I go down the aisles and everybody is checking out the box. They're not just picking and going. They're looking at the fine print and seeing if there's something there that doesn't align, right? So we are moving back to that now with the type of farming that we're doing here. It's bringing back what farming used to be, and I think it's not just as we grew up in Africa. Same here in the United States. Not too long ago, we used to know who grew our lettuce and tomatoes because they were our neighbors. They were our friend down the road. And I think that there's a longing within the community to go back to that. And that's why it is very important, the work we do here within the emerging farming community in general, and especially within the African community farmers, is to bring that sense of connecting ourselves back to our food, being able to have that trust and confidence that used to be there, which is fast eroding. So I think that's the most important work, and for me, if that could happen, then that's a legacy. But I just want to add real quick, in the interest of this delegation here from the Ministry of Zambia, is the running theme here has been about investment. And I think that, in the distant past, when we used to talk about investing in Africa, the demographic of who was that potential investor is not what we're looking at today. You know what I'm talking about. So I just want to say that the biggest investors in Africa today are Africans themselves. And we have a huge community of Africans in diaspora that carry also with them all of the resources that we need to be able to make the types of investment that we require in Africa happen. And I think my plea to you is to begin to find pathways that could be able to motivate, folks like myself going back and investing. Full disclosure, I already spoke to the delegation and my interest into the farm block grant. So I have a cassava operation in Uganda, which I'm thinking I'm going to move that to Zambia now. So, but those are the types of things, people like us that are really invested in trying to be able to go back in our own communities and bring that types of value, because we're not just growing a business, we're growing a community. And I think that's what Zambia needs, right? So that's what I'm thinking, that I want to encourage most of the Africans in diaspora to be able to invest in that type of mindset, that the partnerships here should be between ourselves and our government and government officials to begin to find ways that will make it more enticing to go back home and be able to invest, because we're investing not just in that community, but we're investing in our families, because we left them back home before coming here. So that's very important. And one last thing I wanted to say is that in your quest, as you go to different countries and speak to different governments, that even though we like the big ideas, the big technology, if I listen well, 90% of that breadbasket of Zambia is smallholder farmers. And so that should be our focus. That should be the people that we should lean on and develop, invest in, and build up. So, because that's what we're doing here, and that's my focus within the African immigrant farmers community here in Minnesota, is to how can we be able to grow and have a presence in the market that will bring meaning and value, not just to ourselves, but to the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vitalis. That was very powerful. And I love this conversation because it's just flown. So, Joe, you're going to close us out rightfully as the Zambian in the room, in the panel. And it's actually what Vitalis was saying. You have that opportunity to have experience here and experience back home. The ambassador and the delegation have really emphasized Zambians to think about investing back home. Could you talk to fellow Zambians and those who are in the room on why that is important, how that was important for you, and how you made that happen?
Yeah, well, yeah, good job. Good job, actually. What he said is exactly what is happened to me. I'm a clear case example of your description. And I'm happy that you agree as a delegation that most of the farmers back home are actually small scale investors or small scale farmers. Most of them actually that can do very well if they had the know-how, the resources, and the support that they need. I mean, we started this thing in 2009, and since 2009, we have exponentially grown, but not to the level that we know the potential that we can grow. Within the same community, we have sunk boreholes for the community. We invested in school. There's a small school in the community. We have invested in, we've built bridges. Actually, there was there was a stream and a river that was crossing, and it would separate the one community from the other when it rained. So we've done all those things. My point being, we have invested so much in that community from our own resources. And part of it has to do with us not knowing exactly where resources like yours would be at. And part of it is just not having support from, from governments or from, the people that are responsible. So I'm glad that this has been opened up. I'm glad that you've opened up an office for us in the diaspora. There's so many of us that are very, very interested actually in investing back home and seeing what we can do to better the the standard of agriculture back home and even the lives of people back home. So yeah, I'm very happy that this information has come to me. Believe me, I have also people that I can go back home and share this with. Mukushi block in the area that I'm at, there's so many farmers that are interested in being helped there. So thank you very much for your presence, and thank you for this platform, this information that I carry with me when I go to my community and back home Zambia as well.
All right, and with that, we come to the close of this panel. I want to thank Gary, Joe, and Vitalis. Audience, please give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Please give them another hand. We can stand for another 3 minutes as we also wait to have another final discussion. We can stand for another 3 minutes, please. A break for 3 minutes.
For me, it's better. I know. Yeah, exactly. What do you mean? What do you mean? But that's it's gonna be good.